Hi everyone. I'm really excited to be back here doing another session with GMAT Club on a very significant component on about MBA admissions, which is the essays. And I'm joined by Natasha from the Red Pen. She's the head of content for the Red Pen MBA admissions consulting team. She's really if there's any term beyond the expert, I would just use that. But she's the one who's going to, I think, educate all of us about what it really takes to really craft these amazing essays. So I think before we get started, I just wanted to understand who are we interacting with. Just introduce yourself in the chat, and just share with us what are your expectations from this session. So we are going to try our best to address that, as we go along. And round one deadlines are about 2 weeks away, so I'm sure everyone who's probably attending has leaves with a lot of good information. So share with us where you guys are joining us from. All right, folks from India. Yeah, great question. Another, which round and which schools are you applying to? Do let us know. We'll give it another minute to get started. All right. We have someone from Dhaka in Bangladesh want to know more about Stanford essays. Sure, absolutely. You are going to speak to the right person. She is the person who has really helped us craft really compelling narratives for HBS and Stanford essays. Shweta from Bangalore. Hi, Shweta. Um, Hi, Sunny. Okay, I think the GMAT questions we'll probably take at the end. Essay best practices, do's and don'ts, some samples. I'm afraid we don't have samples. We are bound by client confidentiality. So we strictly do not share, even people who are working with us. Um, we really do not share past client essays, but we do give, for anyone who's working with us, they have a ton of guidance. We do a series of internal workshops specifically for essay writing, and through our knowledge bank, our at least our existing clients definitely have access to those materials. Okay, okay. Quite a few people want to know about Stanford MSX. Okay, someone wants to know about the NYU essay. Hi, Tampa. How are you? Nice to see you here. I'm so glad to see you. Um,
A lot of very interesting essays. I mean,
yes.
I just love seeing the essays people want to understand. So we're going to cover all of those.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess let's get started because we do want to cover a lot of ground, and we want to leave some time for questions as well. Hi, Ishani. Sure, you're applying to HSW, LBS, and Booth, and hopefully you find this session. We definitely, Ishani, I would definitely encourage you to connect with us later as well, because we do have a lot of specific content for HSW and Booth, which is even beyond what we covered today. But I hope we are able to answer specific questions, for you. There's someone, Sikha from Nepal. Hi, I'm so happy to see, people from all over. It's so amazing. All right, so let's get started. So today, I think we are going to speak about 6 MBA essay types that you should know, and Natasha is going to share as much information as possible, to cover, get you an understanding about how to approach these essays. Okay. Um, just a little background about who we are. So Natasha and I work at the Red Pen. We, head the MBA admissions consulting team. We have been around for over a decade, helping applicants apply to some of the most competitive global programs in US and Europe, and also across Southeast Asia. We have a global team of consultants, who have had their MBAs from schools such as Columbia, Wharton, INSEAD, HBS, LBS, Booth, Kellogg. At the same time, we have people who have passed admissions officer, office experience. So it's a nice mix. I am a member of the board of AGAC, which is the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. Collectively, I think we bring very, very strong insider, authentic knowledge about what it really takes to get into a hyper competitive global MBA program. One of the advice I would say is, while the team is robust, our methodology is proven very, very, very robust. There's no replacement for the effort and the involvement. So I would definitely encourage everyone who is interested in knowing more about us to get in touch with us to know more. The next two slides are just about our track records. This is 2020, 2021, and the next one is going to be 2021, 22. Pretty much, I think most of the concentration is about top 25 global programs in the US and in Europe. Like I said, we of course have applicants across other programs as well. But this is where people come to us mostly for. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Natasha, and I hope you all are able to get the most out of what you want from the session. Please keep the questions coming. After Natasha ends the session, I will join her back for the Q&A. Over to you, Natasha.
Hey, good evening, everyone. So I'm just so happy to see the kind of questions that are coming in around essays. A lot of the essays that are mentioned here are really some of my favorite essays to help clients with. So without further ado, let me talk about what I hope you get out of this session. So round one deadlines, are going to start in the next 2 weeks, after the next 2 weeks. And no matter what stage of essay writing or preparation you're in, what I would like to talk about is really how I'd like you to view this session and what I want you to take away from this session. So, at the end of the session, I want you to really evaluate the way you're looking at different kinds of essay prompts, and really evaluate whether you are building an authentic narrative. An authentic narrative to me is really a narrative that is steeped in your life experiences, which depends on and really draws from examples of various life milestones. I want you to also think about your essay from the perspective of whether you're really looking at your essay critically and identifying any of the common mistakes that I'm going to talk about. And because there are ways to get around all of them, there are ways to address all of them. So I'm really going to focus on that as well. And lastly, and most importantly, I'm going to talk about writer's block and what you can do if you are struggling with that at this point. For all of us, we've seen this as something that is a really prevalent problem, a common problem, that you really get to a point in your essay where you can't think beyond what you've written already. It could be the first draft, it could be almost final, where you just feel that there's something that you need to address and you just can't see it anymore because you're close to the material. So let's talk about all of these in this order. I'm first going to really focus on the different kinds of essay prompts. Before I do that, I think what we need to talk about is the purpose of an essay and what purpose does your MBA application essay serve in the context of your larger application. It's important to understand that the essay doesn't really work on its own. You can write a stellar essay, but it doesn't work if it doesn't, if it doesn't sync with other elements of your application. Your essay provides a 3D picture of you. It really goes beyond the form, because your form and your resume and your letters of recommendation can seem very quantitative. It gives quantitative information about you. It really talks about achievements, but your essays add color to who you are. But again, when you are writing your essays, you need to understand that every part of your essay needs to link with or sync with elements from different parts of your application. If you're making references to a particular employer, that employer needs to be on your resume. If you're going to talk about certain insights you gain from an experience, that experience needs to be referenced or mentioned either on your application form, it needs to be mentioned on either your resume, or it could be even referenced in your letters of recommendation. You need to really think of your essay as a pitch document, because when you come to certain kinds of essays, and we're going to talk about that, you could be tempted to really give a lot of information about yourself. But what you need to think about is, even when you're providing personal information, does it really need to be there in the essay? Does it need to be there when you're applying to a highly competitive program? And finally, we're going to talk about impact, because at the end of the day, every essay that you write, every word that you write, is going to focus on how you're going to be a valuable addition to a particular MBA class. So we're going to focus on all of these elements. I want you to keep this in mind while we're discussing different kinds of essays. You really need to also think about, again, with deadlines so close, you really need to think about this checklist. Okay, when you're looking at your essay, when you're evaluating what you've written, you need to focus on, a, is your essay comprehensible? Is it written in simple language? Is it not convoluted? You've not got very long sentences. So all of that you need to look at. You need to look at the language. Your essay needs to be rooted in lived experiences. It needs to go beyond common experiences, common to your particular generation, to your particular country that you're coming from, to the particular life circumstances you're coming from, to really talk about something that is very specific to you. Your essay also needs to be rooted in reflection. You need to remember that sometimes when we want to give context, or we want to establish context, we tend to give extremely descriptive details, which are not really required. You need to be able to sift through all the details, all the noise, to really have a a very clear, focused narrative. Your essay also needs to demonstrate how you interact with the world around you. And while I'm going to touch on this in specific essay types, I think I would want to talk about this right now, because what is important for the school to understand is how you really interact with the world around you. And this is regardless of the essay type that you're going to focus on. So, whether it is a goals essay, whether it is a reflective essay, whether it's an impact essay, you cannot really have an essay that only focuses on you, that is inward looking, and contains life lessons that are very specific to you, but doesn't really define how it impacts your perspective of situations around you. If you find yourself writing an essay that only speaks to you and has meaning only for your particular circumstance, then it becomes very difficult for a reader who doesn't know who you are to understand how you would interact with them if they were to meet you. Your essay, very importantly, needs to demonstrate your understanding and fit with a particular school. And we're going to address that when we talk about specific kinds of essays, because you need to understand the context of a particular essay. And finally, your essay really needs to contain school specific research, which goes beyond the website. And how do we do that? We'll talk about that as we tackle each kind of essay. The six essays that we're going to target today are your goal statement, which is perhaps the most important essay that you're going to write. We're going to talk about why us. So when schools ask you why X school, why do you want to come to us, what is it that you really need to talk about? We're going to talk about the contribution of the impact essay. How do you influence outcomes? How do you influence a community? And schools really want to understand not just what you're going to take away from your time at the school, but also how you're going to enrich the school and enrich the community. We're going to talk about leadership and what does it mean when a school asks you to talk about leadership in the context of what you've done, or what is it that you plan to do. We're going to talk about self-reflective essays, and these are really my favorite essays. We're going to talk about how you can really showcase who you are as a person and how to make it very specific to your life circumstances, while still talking to the school about your learning from them. We're also going to touch upon video prompts, because a lot of schools are now focusing on the video element. And while the questions might be different, while each school may have a different focus, it's important to understand how you can make the most effective use of this particular medium. I'm going to talk about every essay with, the ABCs of what you need to keep in mind when you're answering a particular essay prompt. And, this is the first one. This is the most important one, right? The goal statement. Now, the goal statements are 90% of your MBA essays. They're also some of the most concise essays. So the kind of word space you're going to get to answer these particular questions is going to be anywhere between 300 to about 400, 450 words. And CBS gives you like a very generous, very generous space, because they're giving you 500 words for the goals essay, and then they're going to give you another 300 words to write your why CBS essay. Whereas for other schools, you might have the goal statement and the why X school essay, clubbed together. So that really makes it a very important essay, because you need to ensure that every sentence you write takes the narrative forward. So what is it? What are the ABCs of writing a goal statement? You need to understand first what the school expects you to talk about with a goal statement. When they ask you, what do you want to do? What is your dream job? What is your vision for the future? You need to think about what do they want you to really demonstrate to them. They want you to demonstrate to them ambition. They want you to talk about a goal that you have, that is not a goal that you would achieve with a promotion within the system that you're in. They really want to understand what drives you, what your ambition is. And they want to gain a very clear understanding through this essay of what is important to you. What are the problems that you are aware of? What are the gaps that you see in a particular, societal situation? It could be in a work problem. But what is it that really gets under your skin and makes you feel that, listen, this is where I want to be. This is the problem I want to address. And finally, they also want to understand why the MBA is really going to be an integral part of this particular journey of yours. When you write this essay, typically the structure that you're going to follow is you're going to talk about your origin story, because that is what is going to address this particular story about what is important to you and what is something that drives you and makes you feel that this is why I need to do my MBA. So they really want to understand your origin story, and they want to understand your pivot. So what you need to remember is, based on the school that you're applying to, you're going to come to a particular point in the essay where you say, listen, this is what I've done in the past. This is what drives me. But now, as I think about what I need to do, I realize that I need X, Y, and Z. And you really need to go beyond saying that I need to have broader business skills. So what you don't want to say is things like, I need to understand marketing, finance. I need to understand supply chain. I need to understand finance. These are very generic statements. So when you're really thinking about what you need to attain a particular goal, understand that you need to go beyond just saying that you need broader business skills. You need to talk about skills that are really important for you to be able to address that problem and make it more specific. So, if you're going to say that I need to understand supply chain, then say why you need to understand supply chain. If you're going to talk about why you need marketing as an essential, why marketing is an essential part of your journey going forward, then explain why that is so. But you really need to understand that you should stay away from just saying that you need broader business skills or broader business understanding. You need to also be able to define your short and your long term goals, and you need to be able to understand or explain to the school how elements of your short term goal or experience post MBA are going to help you attain your long term vision. Schools understand that your long term vision changes. Those goalposts will shift once you are in business school. You're really going to be thinking at some point in terms of, do I really want to do this? Or maybe, your goal might become bigger. But what is really important to them to understand is that short term goal. So you need to put a lot of energy into writing that particular piece out. So, if I look at C, content, what you essentially need to think about, and this is going to be part of your brainstorming, is what is important to you. How have you acted on your interests so far? You need to have really well defined post MBA goals, short and long term. And you need to really think about your long term goal in terms of scale. So, if your short term goal focuses on a particular sector and a company that you want to be a part of, and you need to do your research into whether that particular company comes to school, whether they recruit on campus, you also need to talk about how gaining that particular exposure post MBA is going to help you achieve something that is really audacious, that is really big, or that really fulfills this ambition that you have. What you need to avoid is having very, very, very generic goals, which would be true of anyone else who was from your particular sector with the number of years of experience that you have. And yes, I understand that this is difficult because you may really, really want to get into consulting, and that may be true of a lot of other people who are from your sector, who are with a particular number of years of experience. However, within that, I think what you really need to think about is your personal motivation and how you are different from everyone else who wants to get into consulting. You also need to link your goals to your past experience. You cannot talk about a goal which has nothing to do with the kind of skills that you have, with the kind of exposure that you've gained, with the experience that you've had. If your goals are completely out of sync with what you've done so far, it'll be that much more difficult for you to build a convincing story. So think about how you're approaching defining your goals and what is it that you've done so far, which ensures that it would make sense to someone who didn't know you that you want to go in a particular direction. Avoid appearing as someone who wants to change their location, wants to change their sector, wants to change their role. You need to really think about your goals, because your goals are really the bedrock of your application. So put effort into it. If you're at a stage right now where your goals still aren't completely defined, it's not too late. Take a day, think about it, talk to experts in your sector. If you know people who are alums of global business programs, run your goals past them and really think about whether they come across as logical and ambitious to someone who doesn't know you. I'm going to now move on to the next important essay, which is the Why Us essay. And why us is essentially why this school. Now, over here, schools really expect you to do your research. I mean, there's no getting around it. This is really essentially what you need to be on top of. How deep is your research? Have you gone beyond the website? Have you spoken to student ambassadors? Have you connected with alums? Are you able to, have you connected with the presidents of the clubs that you want to really be a part of on campus? What are the questions you've asked them? Do you understand what the experience of being on a particular campus is going to be like? This is essentially what the Why Us essay is all about. And it's not really about giving the school a laundry list of this course, this professor, this experiential learning program, this recruitment trek. Those need to be a part of your element, but you're not getting brownie points for ticking the boxes of whether you've mentioned all of this. What really will make sense is if everything that you're referencing makes sense in the context of the goals that you have told the school that you have. So you need to really deeply research these resources, and you need to demonstrate to the school that with your understanding of these resources and how they fit with your goal and your understanding about the community, because that needs to be an essential part of your research. What kind of students the school has, what does a typical day look like for a student, what are you going to be spending time on? So when you understand what the school is all about, is when you can really write a convincing why us essay. If your essay really starts looking like you could just change the name of the school and it would still make sense, that essay doesn't really land well. However, what you need to avoid with this particular essay is you need to avoid trying to make your essay school specific by complimenting the school. So if you start finding yourself writing statements like, X school with its focus on technology is the ideal destination for me. Again, this sentence does not land well with an admissions committee, because essentially what you're telling them is you're telling them something they already know about themselves. What you need to do is really personalize that statement. So if you are someone who is from a technology background, but suppose you want to really now focus on larger business problems, and that is why you want an MBA, because you have a goal of maybe growing a business. You want to be a part of and essentially a new solution. You want to look at exploring something entrepreneurially. But what you need to then talk to the school about is really how certain resources at the school are going to specifically link to elements of your goal. But just generically telling the school that you are a great school for in this particular sector, or your 3/4 of your class looks at consulting opportunities. You're telling the school what they already know about themselves. You're literally almost flattering the school. So it is not really a good approach, because it does not make your essay sound more school specific. What you also need to avoid are statements like, attending Stanford is going to make me a great leader. Yes, they know that. But how is it going to help you become a great leader is what they're more interested in. So, really be very, very specific about how a school is going to help you achieve specific elements of your goal, and how the network is going to help you. I think another issue that I have with this particular essay is that a lot of people reference a school's network, um, but they don't really say how that network is going to help them in their post MBA life. So if you are able to join the dots over there, trust me, that will make your essay stand out. I'm now going to talk about contribution or impact essays. One of the essays that I always think of when I talk about contribution or impact is really Wharton's second essay, where they want to understand how you're going to contribute or how you're going to enrich the school's community. Tuck has essays which really ask you to think about how you're going to contribute towards the school. Darden has a series of essays which where they really want to understand how you are going to shape your own experience as a member of the Darden community. So you need to understand that when people talk about contribution or they talk about impact, they really want to understand how you're going to be a valuable addition to a class. They want to understand how you see yourself contributing towards communities, and they also might look at how you view impact in professional or other settings. So over here you need to think about how you are going to contribute towards communities. Now that community might be the school, that community might be a specific professional setting. You need to look at the context of the prompt that you're answering, but you need to think about how you plan to commit to contribute towards a community. You need to think about what is important to you. When you think about contribution, don't view it by the lens of what you think the school expects of you, but you really need to think about what skills and values you have, and how that is going to allow you to contribute very meaningfully towards a particular community. One of the exercises that we make clients do, and I think it's a very valuable exercise, is we make them reflect on their values. We have a tool where we ask them to keep shortlisting values that describe them until they really land on descriptors that are very personal. It's a good exercise to do because thinking about what matters to you will allow you to write a meaningful essay, no matter which essay topic you're tackling. So, what you need to think about is really what is important to you and where you think you have the not just the expertise, but also the heart and the passion to really do something meaningful. You need to also think about what you've done so far, because if you're going to think about impact in the future, you need to also think about what is it that you've done so far that equips you to manage or equips you to contribute in a particular way. Everything needs to be rooted in life experiences. So really dig deep and think about just the body of experiences that you've had. You need to really also focus on the lasting value of what you've done. What is it that you've done in the past where you see its impact not just on a particular situation, but beyond that situation? How has it impacted people, situations, lives, processes, if it's about, a particular organization? How has it impacted organizational strategy? How has it impacted leadership? You can think about various facets of impact, but really look at lasting value beyond the circumstance that you're describing. What is also important for you to think about is the evolution of your perspective. Maybe you thought about a particular situation or particular impact in a certain way, but when you experienced it, when you went through it, your perspective could change, and it could change in many ways. It could evolve because you now understand more facets of a particular situation. Maybe you had a change of heart. Maybe you understood how you could do something more meaningful. But you really need to think about who you were before the instance and who you were after you went through a particular experience, and how that makes you better equipped to really contribute or make a certain impact. What you need to really avoid is examples that go too far back. If you start finding yourself talking about things that happened when you were in elementary school, before the age of 10, you're really going too far back. You need to talk about stuff where you have a more nuanced understanding of the world. So, talking about things which are too far back from childhood may not allow you to really give a very nuanced context. So, you need to think about that as well. You also need to avoid thinking inwards. When you focus inwards, you need to be able to, you kind of lose a sense of how your actions impact others. I think an example that I could give you is, though it's not necessarily a contribution example, but suppose you went on a trek and you had a lot of personal epiphanies. You understood who you were as a person. You understood how you reacted to stress, how you reacted to unforeseen circumstances. It still tells me only about you and how you went through a personally transformative experience. However, I don't get an understanding of how that would define your interactions with others. However, if you were to tell me that you were part of Teach for India, suppose you were volunteering and you were teaching children, and you understood something fundamental over here. You understood how you connected with children, what helped you connect with them, what helped you teach them concepts, what was the kind of learning you were able to impart. You're giving them a very, very rich picture of who you are, how you interact with people, how you process information when there are a lot of variables, external variables around you. And that is a much richer way to talk about impact. So always think about impact from the lens of how you interact with the world around you. You also need to focus on lasting value, lasting impact. So don't focus on impact where you're going to describe what happened just immediately after that. If you can think about value that you've created that has gone beyond 6 months, I think that's a great context to have in mind. That's a great benchmark to have in mind. Look at value that goes beyond 6 months when the situation has passed. I'm now going to talk about leadership essays. I think one of the first essays that comes to mind is really Kellogg's first essay, where they talk about you providing them with an example where you've overcome challenges and you have created lasting value. Now, this is a classic textbook leadership essay example. But what you need to understand with leadership is, a lot of us who are applying to business school may be at very different levels of leadership. You could be a first time manager. You could be someone who manages large teams. You could be someone without a team. How do you really position leadership is something you need to think about. What they want to understand is not how many people you led, but what they want to understand is your perspective. You could be someone without a team, but maybe you found yourself in situations where you had to take on a leadership role. And that is really true of a lot of roles that we come across. You need to display a perspective of understanding what a leader needs to do. What is the kind of thinking a leader needs to display, which means that you need to think about organizational impact. You need to think about long term impact of your actions. You need to understand strategically what are the learnings that you've had. How did it influence your thinking? How did you think about certain strategic decision making factors before you went through this particular experience, and then how did you think about it later? But your perspective is really what matters. You need to also talk about things like managing ambiguity, managing challenging situations, and you really need to root all your leadership perspective in experience. It is not enough in any MBA application essay to really talk about assertions. If you start finding yourself writing sentences like, I'm a humble person, I'm a good listener, you really need to think about whether you've provided an example that proves that you were a good listener. So everything needs to be rooted in life experiences. And how do you create lasting value? I think lasting value is something that you need to really think about, no matter which essay you write. How does the impact that you create go beyond 6 months? How does it evolve from there? Again, with the leadership essay, what you need to avoid is focusing on too much execution detail. So if you find yourself really thinking about giving a reader context by writing statements like, first I went here, then I did this, then we went to another team, then we had to get a buy-in from 10 stakeholders, then we went and did that, but then this was a challenge, you're giving too much detail. You need to think strategically. What is it that you set out to achieve? What were the situations that you encountered? And how can you really make those really concise to give the reader an idea of typically what were the challenges that you faced? And what is it that you've achieved in the end and created impact? That's the structure that you need to follow. But what you do not need to really tell them is the 10 steps that you had to execute in order to achieve that particular outcome. I'm not going to talk about self reflection essays because I think a lot of you described in the chat certain essays that you're facing. So from what I remember, someone talked about the NYU Stern Pick Six essay. Someone spoke about even the Fuqua 25 Things essay. Someone spoke about the Stanford What Matters Most essay. You also have HBS's What Else essay. And these are all essays, though they're very, very diverse prompts, but they're all rooted in self reflection. So let's talk about what you need to do if you're going to write an effective self-reflection essay. And I really love some of these prompts because they make you reflect just by how out there they are and just how different they are. And if these are not essays that you plan well, you might find yourself either giving a lot of extraneous information to the reader, which doesn't help your application, or you might find yourself talking about things which may tell the reader a lot more about you than you really want to share. So let's talk about doing this particular essay very effectively. Over here, what schools really expect is a unique perspective. A unique perspective, not as in a different perspective, but a unique perspective that is really very, very individual and specific to you. They want an understanding not just of who you are, but they also want an understanding of how you relate to the world. One line that a lot of us would write in essays would be how we want to be part of a diverse class. And diversity would not necessarily just mean different nationalities or gender, but it's also about being in a class where everyone is an individual who's contributing a very specific and different point of view. So really think about it from that perspective because you need to show the school how you are a unique individual. So that's what needs to really come out in self-reflection reflection essays. Um, the best way to think about brainstorming for a self reflection essay is thinking about your core values. What is important to you, and who have been important people in your life, important situations, important milestones, and really list those down to understand why those are important to you and how they relate to your core belief system. You need to, once you do this analysis, you'll find yourself with a greater degree of self-awareness because you will really understand what drives you and what is important to you and why those things are important to you. You will also find yourself thinking about communities that you've been a part of and how you really perceive those communities, how you understand what is important to them. Is this relevant for every self reflection essay? No. But I'm going to come back to my point about essays really needing to reflect how you interact with the world around you. So it's important for you to think about not just yourself and what drives you, but also what makes you a member of any community that you're a part of, and how do you understand that community as well as gaps in that community. When you think about how you need to structure this essay, and I'm going to kind of just put the Duke Fuqua 25 things essay away right now, but really any other essay, is you need to think about important milestones. So whether you're tackling NYU Stern's Pick Six essay, you need to think about milestones that have been important to you because you may actually have pictures from around that time. It will stop you from being very generic. You need to think about what was the learning that you had from these experiences. A lot of essays like what matters most or even what else really want to what is important in these particular essays is understanding patterns of behavior, understanding patterns of your own behavior, because when you start listing out your core values, your important milestones in your life, why they're important for you, what did you learn from those experiences, you'll start identifying patterns of behavior, the way you react to situations, the way you interact with people, and all these patterns will help you really talk about what matters to you. It will really help you tell the school that, listen, you've read everything about me in the rest of my application, but what you don't know about me, and which is a common thread which ties together all these achievements and these hobbies and this family background, is this about me. This is how I process information. This is how I perceive the world. This is what drives me. This is what drives me to create change. So understanding who you are really begins with understanding your core values, your milestones, your influences, and then really talking about examples from those of those important milestones. It talks about how you're going to present to the school what you've learned from these life experiences and how they define who you are, and how that leads you to influence the world around you. So always think about it in that manner or in that order. What are important milestones? What have you learned from them? And how do you now influence the world around you because you are now the person that you are? What you need to avoid again in this essay is just having a perspective that is too inward focused and understanding impact only on yourself, understanding how a particular situation impacts you. Yes, that is important, but that is only part of the story. And if you again are going to talk about a future that is only with the lens of you and what happens to you in the future, again important, but again only part of the story, and it's a missed opportunity. You can talk about something which is bigger than yourself, and that is really what you need to think about. I'm finally going to talk about video prompts, which is something that you need to be prepared about. Again, it's difficult to be very specific because schools, by and large, may ask you different questions and may have different focus areas. But what you need to think about is that video prompts are really opportunities for you to go beyond the written word, and talk about yourself, your ambition, introducing yourself to the school in a way where you do have control over the narrative, but you need to be very careful about how you are prepared for this, because the worst thing you can do for a video prompt is just not be prepared until the last minute or the day before you actually need to record your answers. So some of the things that you can do to be in control of your narrative is really understand the platform that you're going to be working on, understand how you want to project yourself. So really control your background, control how you appear, and control how calm you're going to be when you answer the questions, which is also really, really important. You need to practice. So, practicing in front of a camera is very important because you just become comfortable with not talking to a person or not looking someone in the eye, but really talking to a camera or to a blinking light. You'll also learn how to maintain eye contact. And for questions where you have a very limited time to answer, you will also learn how to not panic, how to have talking points that will help you, regardless of the question that you're answering. Setting the stage is important, so that also is a part of practicing. Please don't leave video prompts till the end, even if you have a grace period before you can submit your video essays or your responses. Ensure that you practice at least a week prior so that you're confident, you come across as someone who's really put together and whose answers without panicking. I'm also going to now, this is not the seventh essay that I'm going to talk about, but I think one of the questions that people do have is, when do I use the optional essay? Am I expected to use the optional essay? Um, there are specific circumstances where you need to make use of an optional essay, other than Stanford's essay, which specifically asks you to talk about 3 examples where you've made an impact. But any other essay which starts with, is there anything more that you'd like us to know? Then, let's consider those particular essays. These particular essays have specific context that you need to keep in mind. So either A, you're using it because you want to explain certain things, you want to talk about gaps in employment, you want to talk about fluctuations, you want to talk about why you decided to leave your master's because you need to focus on getting a job, you had to support your family. These are circumstances that you need to provide context for. It is important that you do so, and you use the optional essay. You may even have, you may even have a situation like your recommender may have changed jobs, and you want to explain that. You want to explain why their email address does not reflect the same company as when you reported to them. All of those things can be used in the optional essay. You may also want to use the optional essay to talk about, you may not be from a quant oriented program, you may not be from a STEM focused program, and you really want to tell the school that I'm still a good fit for a very rigorous program. So you may want to use that optional essay to talk about professional experiences or certifications you have, which specifically will demonstrate why you are ready to be a part of their program. Finally, you might use the optional essay. This is rare, but it does happen because maybe you have a passion or you have something that really informs every part of your life, but there's just no space on the application. There's no space on the essays for you to talk about that. So it's a good idea to think about using the optional essay to do that. We've had clients who have used it very successfully to talk about things like a specific hobby which has influenced everything from the life decisions they've made to the professional choices they've made. And these are beautiful essays to read. However, I am going to mention, please do not write an essay for another school, think that, oh, this is just like a great essay, this is who I am, and then use that essay as the optional essay for other schools. That is the worst thing that you can do. And schools do not take to this kindly, because it's very obvious that this is an essay which has been written for another prompt for another school. So please don't do that. I'm going to talk about what you need to avoid in essays, and I've really grouped them into 4 categories because I think this is essential. If you understand this, you really know, what to avoid. So I think you need to think about your strategy, and your strategy essentially is whether you are answering the prompt, and you are answering the prompt completely. And if you are finding yourself writing a creative writing assignment, if you're thinking about goals that are not very ambitious, if you're not using the optional essay efficiently, if your research is really not up to scratch, then you're not strategizing that essay properly. So now is the time for you to really step back and think about your strategy. Tone tone is very important, because you could be writing everything that you're supposed to write about, but your essay still might not be impactful. So when you're talking about tone, a couple of mistakes that people make is really thinking about a school and who they are. So if you think about Kellogg as a marketing school, or you think about CBS only for finance, then what happens is you tend to fit your narrative to that particular preconception, and that really will make your essay not sound that great. um, Playing the victim. So if you find yourself saying, oh, this happened to me, or you start writing sentences which are in passive voice, you will find yourself as, coming across as someone who doesn't take charge of situations, who does not take ownership. And you might feel that this is an unfair statement because you've done everything right. But sometimes it's just as simple as checking whether you're using active or passive voice. And that could make a world of difference to your essay. Focusing on execution, if you start giving a lot of details about the 10 steps that you did in order to execute a particular project, you're not going to have an effective essay, apart from really busting the word count. And also, if you start talking about country specific references, so if you start talking in your country's currency, or if you start talking about things like tier 2 and tier 3 cities, or if you start giving explanations like, being from a business family, I was the only one to hold down a professional job. This doesn't really make sense to someone who's not from your culture. So you really need to think about how you're positioning content on your essay. Another thing is very important is content, the actual content. Please do not approach your business school essay as creative writing. So you do not need to have dialogues between characters in your essay. Please do not use, another language in romanized in your essay, and then you have like another sentence which explains why, what each character was saying to each other in English. These are very, very messy ways to write your essay. Please do not focus on that. And doing all of this takes up word count and really takes away from the impact that you could make. Do not start your essay with a quote. Now this is really my personal hang. It's really something that I have an issue with. But it's primarily because what you want to say in that essay needs to be what you want to say in that essay. And it should not be something that, a famous person said, and now, someone has put it in better words than you, essentially. And now I'm going to talk about what I did. So, avoid quotes unless they are really, really central to your narrative, because maybe it was a quote that inspired you at some point in your life, and that has defined who you are as a person. But those instances are rare. And even if you're going to position it that way, I would say there are still a lot of ways where you can root inspiration in experience and not in a quotation. Plagiarism. You might look at essays from seniors, you might look at essays online, you might read the Harvard's Guide, and you might think that, I really like this sentence, or this person has the exact same experience as me, and I really want to focus on this theme. If you find yourself picking up sentences or picking up statements or picking up particular projects from another essay, trust me, schools know that. Every school has plagiarism software, and you are, without realizing it, you're really ruining your chances of admission. So avoid any form of being inspired. Excessive jargon. If you find yourself using buzzwords from a particular industry, just don't. Okay, assume that the person that is reading your essay is really a layperson who has no idea of the industry that you're from. And disregarding explicit instructions. So if you've been told that you write in X font, have double spacing, use only a specific kind of font, listen to those instructions, research the instructions, and please follow them to the T. Um, Another thing that I'm now going to focus on is what to do when you're stuck, because you are going to have writer's block, whether it's the final version of your essay or the first draft of your essay. You are going to face writer's block at some point. So I've just got like a list of things that you can do to get your juices going again. Take a step back and really think about your long and short term goals. Sometimes just revisiting them and understanding what your short term goal means in terms of actions and what your long term goal means in terms of actions can help you put things in perspective. Focusing on other parts of your application, such as the subjective questions on your application form, your resume, your letters of recommendation, sometimes can also give you a different perspective. And when you read those and then you come back and look at your essay, you might find that there are certain gaps in your essay which make it much easier for you to tackle, because now you see specifics, and it's easier to answer them. uh, Talk about self reflection. I think self reflection is really something that is very, very individual. But if you find yourself caught on self reflection, and even after doing an exercise that aids self reflection, if you still find yourself at a loss, sometimes it helps to talk to others. So I would say talk to a really close work colleague, or talk to someone who understands you and your ambitions, which could be in your personal life or professional life. But really, sometimes getting perspective from someone who knows you about who you are, what is important to you, and maybe what drives you, what they see as what drives you and your passions, can help you put things in perspective. Another thing that you might get stuck on is really when you want to write that why X school essay. So you need to sharpen your research. Go back to the drawing board, talk to more alums, talk to more students, talk to people who are student ambassadors, maybe change up the questions that you're asking them. And that will help you, again, add more meat to your essay. Go beyond a linear approach to writing. Now, this is really important because I think all of us are taught to write essays as introduction, body, and conclusion. And sometimes you just get stuck on the introduction because you just can't think beyond that. But you do have content to write in the body and the conclusion. So what I would say is, if you find yourself getting stuck on the structure, just put a single line for the introduction. You'll figure it out later, and then write the body. Or if you can think of a great conclusion and you say, you know what, this is really what I want to end the essay on, write the conclusion first. Don't get stuck with the traditional way of writing, and that will help you break writer's block. Because when you write a conclusion first, for example, you might think of 10 things that you want to add in the introduction so that it links with the conclusion. You might think of things that you want to put in the body of the essay so that the introduction makes sense. So just go with what you've thought of first and what you have content for first. Have discipline, create a timetable to work on every aspect of your application, including the essay. So when you have a rigor in terms of, I'm going to focus on my application at this time or at this day of the week, or just daily, I'm going to spend 1 hour and then I'm maybe going to go away from it and I'll come back and tackle it again. Just having discipline will ensure that at least you're putting words on paper. Even if it doesn't make sense to you at that point, when you revisit it, you'll find that at least you have a body of material to build on. And take breaks. Don't just keep writing your essay and focusing only on your essay. It's important to take breaks from your essay so that you can come back to it with a renewed perspective. So do other parts of your application, I would say the resume, and then come back and then write your essay again. So I'm done with my content, and I think Preeti is going to come back now. But we're now going to think about let's look at the questions. Hey, Preeti.
Hey, Natasha. Well, thank you so much, as always, for I think that wonderful and very detailed session. While some of you may have completely understood what Natasha is saying, for some of you, I don't know what stages of essay writing you are, but when Natasha has shared, her knowledge with us, and when we've seen her actually craft application essays or turn, essays around. Um, it has when you are actually applying what she's saying and you listen to it carefully, you will know that there is a lot, and this is only for some of you who have kind of struggled to get some sort of guidance. So what we have also done for our package clients is we've given them detailed guidance in terms of how to write a first kind of draft without giving them templates. We do not do that. I would like to say very clearly, one, we are bound by some really strong principles of governance working in this industry. We do not write essays for anyone, we do not write anything, but the specificity of guidance definitely helps. So I think whatever Natasha has said, we definitely go 10 steps beyond that, and give more guidance, if you're for those of some of you who are working with us. But I hope you found the content really useful. I certainly learn every time I think I hear from Natasha. I think and doing this at this point of time, I think we are completely swamped right now. So I would really like to thank her for taking the time and putting this together and doing this for all of you. And I hope that not just people who have joined us now, but anyone who watches the recording later on can definitely benefit from such detailed guidance. Honestly, I have not found any guidance on MBA essay writing to the kind of detail that she shares. All right, so we're going to take a few questions which are on there, some of them which I can answer myself, and if they're essay specific, I'm going to just throw them right back at Natasha.
Could I answer one question before you start, Preeti?
Sure, please go for
Because
it.
it just struck me. So there's a question, I think, from Taha, which says, can we brag or lie in the essays, or should we be completely authentic? Be completely authentic. Do not lie or brag. Okay.
Yeah,
Schools can spot that from a mile away. Okay.
yeah,
You may think that it looks perfectly fine, and maybe you kind of take an opinion from three people and they say, yes, looks great. Schools know when something is exaggerated. Schools understand when something does not fit the rest of your story. So please be completely authentic in every part of your application. Even if there are gaps, even if there are work experience gaps, even if you've not, and especially if you've not gone through a particular life experience, do not misrepresent anything in any part of your application. But even if you feel that the essay is a place where there's scope to build things up or to be a little fluffy around some of the details, do not do that. Okay. And I'm sorry, Preeti, I just had to say that because
yeah.
it was on the question list. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad you picked that question. I saw that question as well. So I guess for anyone who's working on your own, always remember, also have a context to whom you're who's going to read your essays, right? I always say that when you have a certain context, it creates a shift in your performance, in your perspective. If, for example, you are talking to you know um 12-year-old kid, you'd explain things in a different way. If you're talking to a room full of teenagers, you'd probably prepare in a different way. This is, you're talking to admissions officers at some of the most competitive business programs that people are going to apply around the world. They're going to read thousands of applications, and you're going to be a business leader who's going to change the world tomorrow and make it a better place, hopefully. So think from that context, from instead of sitting in that place and let me write something which I hope that they like, and they've said this time and again, please don't write from that lens.
And
um
let me address two things. If you brag, there's always someone who's achieved more than you. So don't
yeah,
brag, because the scale of what is achievement is really, really very variable. So bragging or exaggerating what you've done doesn't help your case, because there's always someone who's done more in their application. The second thing is, when you are inauthentic, it shows, because someone who has actually gone through that experience will have a far more nuanced learning, will have a far more nuanced view of a particular experience. If you've not gone through that experience, you are not going to be able to talk about it with the same level of detail and insight. So immediately, anyone who reads your essay is going to know that this is inauthentic. So that's two specific points that you need to keep in mind.
Yeah, that I think that's great advice. Absolutely great advice. So let's go through the round of questions. We are, I think, almost on time, but we are going to take the questions. Is there any way to prepare for GMAT quant from scratch? Well, we are not really GMAT experts, but since you're on GMAT Club, there are many experts on the platform. So I would encourage you to um, explore that. Hi Shubhangi, nice to see you here. You wanted to know more about the goals. I hope you got the answers, and you can obviously reach out to us directly any which ways. You
For
know
more
that.
help. Yeah.
For more help, you know that.
Yeah.
Ishani, okay, that was just an introduction. Anil, he was looking for to know more about Stanford MSX and USC. I hope you got the essay guidance for that. If you're looking for school specific information, please visit the school's website. Ishani Singh would love to learn a bit more about how to really personalize common essays like career goals to each school. Um, I'm going to just add 2 cents about it, and then I'm going to pass on to Natasha. I think I always use these dating analogies because people are usually in that phase of life, and it's probably easier to understand. So I always tell some of the clients who are working with us, it's like you're dating like 5 people, and you're trying to convince each one of them that you're a great fit. How does that go, right? And you need to do it authentically, right? So ideally, the best way to approach this is to start your MBA preparation 2 years in advance. If not 2 years, at least a year in advance, so that when you're researching schools, you do understand why a particular school appeals to you and why does it not. Because time and again, if you're researching and researching and researching, you're talking to people, current students, alums, you are gathering information from social media channels, school YouTube channels, school websites, and you're like, nothing just connects the school, school ethos with me, then probably it's not a school you need to apply to at all. So the way to personalize common essays like career goals to each school is first to know what your goals are. First, to really identify what is it that you truly want to do. That self of reflection and that self awareness exercise, even though it's time consuming, that itself goes a long way in solving all these other problems. Then
Yeah.
you actually research schools, and then you start to find, okay, this makes sense, that makes sense. This is easier said than done, though, because in some cases people who are coming with generic career backgrounds, who only have a vague idea of what they want to do, post MBA. But that's where I guess consultants come in. And if you there's obviously a lot of information available online. But if you do struggle with any specific aspects, I'm happy to speak in greater detail. Natasha, what do you want to say to that?
No, I agree because it's only when you define your goals are you really going to understand what you need in order to achieve those goals. And once you have that, it makes it easier for you to even comb through a website and really understand whether the resources mentioned are going to help you achieve what you want to. So,
Yeah.
defining the goals and really defining what you need to get to those goals is what will help you write a very specific career focused essay, and it will make your research also far more effective. So that's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, especially because when you're confused, you write from a lens of that, I think this might fly, but
Yeah,
I will apply to Columbia because, or Harvard, or whichever, top ranked school, because I'll just go there and I'll figure it out. And it's not as easy. When you
yeah,
are on campus, it's not
yeah.
as easy as just figuring things out. So it's always good to have a plan. It's okay if plans change once you are on campus. But if you're able to convince an admissions committee officer as to what your career goal is and your chances of recruitability within the first 3 months of graduation, then of course you
That
are
just strengthens
in a
your
good
case.
space. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Krishna is asking, do your assistant writing essays and SOPs? No, we do not write. We do not write, but we do have a whole team of content folks. How we work and all. I'm happy to explain that one on one. But we don't do the actual writing. Um, but
I'd
but you
Yeah,
will actually come up with drafts which are a lot better, which are yours, which are
yeah.
original.
We'll help you refine your voice. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
Um,
question here, Preeti. From when should I ideally start working on essays in my prep journey? So I know that you and I both have a view around that. And if I don't have a study group or a circle, how can I get my essays critically examined?
I think that's a question for you. You
Okay,
should go.
so when should you start working? I would say that when you decide to apply to business school, you should first focus on your resume. You should then focus on understanding the subjective questions in your application form, and then you should start writing your essay. So typically, if your prep journey, when you start your prep journey, you should spend, if you have the time, you should spend maybe the first 2 to 3 weeks getting all these other pieces of your application at least into a strategic phase where you know what you want to write, or you're thinking about your resume and you know what you want to emphasize. You've thought about your goals. At that point is when you start writing your essays. So I would say that essays would be typically after your resume and after viewing the application form and really understanding the information that the school is asking for on other parts of your application. That's when you are able to write your most effective essay. If you don't have a study group or a circle, ideally I would say that think about a colleague, who you really look up to, and maybe you might want to connect on LinkedIn, or you might want to connect with people who are in the space where you want to be, and really form connections. And which is why, like Preeti said, don't, if that's the situation you're in, don't apply to business school with only like a month or less than a month to spare, because you really need to plan all these parts of your journey. And of course, if you don't have access to any of that, consider working with a consultant who will be able to give you professional feedback, which is informed feedback. Yeah, Preeti.
Yeah, I think that's yeah, that was a question for you. So I think there's little I can add over there. Um, in 3 years of work experience in investment banking, enough for getting admittance Stanford GSB? Yeah, I think it depends on what impact have you created. This is a question for a Stanford
Yeah.
adcom. Yeah, you should
Yes.
ask this to the admissions committee. I mean, we are not the right people to answer that question. Aparna, hi, I'm yet to take my GMAT, looking for top schools, experience in tech industry, applying to PR2 grade. Wish you all the best. Which should be the target US M15 schools for one with 6+ years years
Entrepreneur.
entrepreneurial experience, work ex in real estate. Okay, some ecological social impact 720 Gmail. Okay, Rudra, I think Rudra, you should reach out to us. We do 45 minute, you know, consultation. The initial consultation is free, and we do a generous 45 minute, which is not your typical sales call explaining about process. We spend a large chunk of the time answering your questions, assessing everything. Though we the routine questions we do get asked on these first calls is, give me a list of schools. That's like, one of my colleagues, she just uses analogy. It's like, going to a doctor and saying, please give me the prescription, without even letting them assess your symptoms. So thanks to my colleague for that. So I think that it's literally like that. So we need to assess your profile. At least give us some information. If an admissions officer could just look at your resume and tell you that if they are a good fit for the school, then it would not have such an extensive application. And we want to be very fair and do justice to the fact that, if you are come to us, that, we are able to give you the right advice. So give us more information than just this much. Share your resume, allow us the opportunity to talk to you for a good 30 to 45 minutes, and then we should be at least able to give you some direction of schools to kind of at least that you should start researching for.
Preeti, there are a
um,
couple of very interesting questions that I'd like to maybe
Go
club
for it.
together and answer. So I
Go for
think
it.
Jay Chaudhary and Vinayak have questions around school research, and I know Preeti is going to chip in with this as well. So Jay says he's in the process of writing his first drafts, and he wants to understand about the research part for why X college, or how to approach alums or students. And Vinayak also, I'm adding to that because Vinayak's question is kind of related, where he says that I mentioned that the research should go beyond the website. So, what are the different channels, and what is the different information that people should be looking for in these channels? And Preeti and I both have, very, very strong views about it. So, A, when we say that you need to go beyond the website, you need to go beyond the first one or two clicks of the website. So, if you're only seeing the home page and you're seeing maybe specific web pages, that's not sufficient. Okay. So, I'll first address one part of it. You need to know school social media channels. Do you follow their YouTube? Do you view admissions? Admissions committees or admissions offices videos on their social media channels? Do you listen to their podcasts? Do you follow professors who you're interested in? Most of them will have research online. They will have a LinkedIn page detailing their new developments. They will have a voice on podcasts. You need to be able to follow your curiosity and really understand what is it that you want to know about the school, because trust me, a lot of that information, the starting point will be their social media channels. If you're going to talk about alums or students, most schools will have student ambassadors. In fact, one interesting thing, which I think Preeti and I were talking about, the information about student ambassadors or where you can contact them may not be very easily accessible, in the sense that they might not be the first few pages that you see on the website. You really need to dig to find it. And a lot of
Yeah.
times that is intentional, okay, because they want to know how you connect with them. They want to understand how you interact with them. So student ambassadors are typically a good source of information. A lot of times, if you attend events, the schools themselves will pass out their contact information, if it's a student, whether it's an alum, whether it's someone from the admissions office, and those can be starting points. You need to really engage with the school to understand how you can interact with the school. Sometimes they may reference courses, professors, or methodologies on those events, which can be the starting point for your Google search. I mean, Google is the answer to everything. But if you want to know the direction that you need to go in, start engaging with the school and start looking at their social media channels. It's something that I will tell you right now. Preeti, another thing that Preeti has done is we have a very extensive webinar on how to research a school
Yeah.
on TRP's YouTube channel as well. So you can look at that, because that will really lay out for you a template in terms of how you need to think about researching a school.
Yeah, I
Preeti,
was
what?
just going to say that we ran a very extensive webinar series covering every application component in detail. And Jay and Vinayak do look at there's in fact I just shared it with someone today. Do look at the webinar on how to research business schools and find the right fit school. It's a very extensive webinar. You'll find lots of good information, and it also has a list of questions as to how to approach in terms of how to approach alums or students. Ideally, Natasha, I think, it covered that in terms of student ambassadors. But you have to do the groundwork. You have to ask around. LinkedIn is an amazing platform to find alums as well and connect with people. And in today's day and age, it's it's it, it's really possible, and you
Yeah,
can
and
definitely.
you're going to have to do a lot of legwork. Not everyone replies to you, so you may
Yeah.
reach out to 10 people, one response. But that's part of your perseverance. So look at it as just an exercise in understanding that you need to do a lot of legwork to get your application, really grounded.
Yeah, and you can put an outreach template together. You can put a template together, and then you can customize that template as and when you write to whoever you're writing to, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
Preeti,
Sunny is
Ishani,
asking, can you share?
yeah,
I think
yeah,
we
no,
missed
please,
this question over here.
yeah.
Can you also share the document being presented for download? So, Sunny, unfortunately not, but because this recording is going to be available on YouTube at this very same link, so you can go back and take screenshots, and it's going to be all yours. Yeah, Natasha, you were saying something.
No, Ishani asked, does the Red Pen do sense checks on completed applications?
Okay. Yes, we do. We do have a spot analysis service, and this is the time of the year when we do a lot because we really do not have bandwidth to service anyone on comprehensive school applications. At least in like 2-3 weeks, we definitely need a month. So depending on school deadlines, we are still helping folks for round one as well, but mostly folks who come to us with October deadlines. So if you have any schools that you're applying to in October, do reach out to us. But a lot of what we do right now is a lot of standalone services, like helping with standalone essay editing, standalone resume, letters of recommendation, or this spot check that we do, spot analysis. where we do a comprehensive 2 to 3 time review of your entire MBA application. So you put the whole application together and then you come to us, and then we review it, we give you feedback, and there will be multiple specialists and the team of consultants. So I think you get feedback from multiple quarters. So we do that, Ishani. So feel free to contact us on our website, and you'll get all the information. Someone will speak with you.
Okay, Preeti,
Natasha, you want to
Sunny.
take the next question?
Yeah, Sunny's asked a question that I really want to answer. So, yeah. So
Go
he
for it.
asked that, is it okay to highlight multiple mediocre experiences to better highlight specific skills, or is it preferred to restrict only to the few but best projects or experiences?
That's really a
Sunny,
question for you. So I totally get that. Go for it.
okay, so Sunny, best and mediocre are relative terms. Okay,
Yeah.
you might think something is your best experience, but it may, when you kind of maybe you interact with me and I tell you, listen, Sunny, maybe this was the first time you did something, and therefore it's important to you. Maybe it was something you did as a first time manager, and it's really close to you because that was the first time that you came up. You kind of faced this challenge. However, it's a mediocre experience to me because it's an experience that is common to many first time managers. Okay. So, best, it may be best because it's an emotional experience. It may be best because it was the first time you did something at a particular time or scale, or maybe the first time ever. But don't define an experience as good or mediocre without understanding the learnings that you had from it, without understanding just why were those skills that you gained from there so important. It is important to reflect on every experience and not categorize them as mediocre, best, worst. I think worst, okay, maybe that is the only thing that has a defined category, but please don't assign scale or degree of goodness to any of your experiences, because an experience is relevant only in the context of the essay prompt. It is not going to be considered mediocre or best. What is important for me is the reflection that you've had from it, and sometimes everyday experiences can give you the best reflection. So yeah, that is my answer, Preeti.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really relative, to be honest. About what your experiences are, but also do understand that um, this is a business school application. So while they're especially for US schools, they do require there are questions and prompts that require you to share personal information, personal values, and who you are. They want to know who you are just beyond your professional, your resume, your work life. And know that this is a business school application. So while you may think that this is the most significant experience of my life, that may not be, whether it's mediocre or not or whatever, it may not be relevant from a business school admissions perspective. So do your research very well as to if you know what happens in an MBA class, because the MBA degree is not like medicine or law, right? It's not like this curriculum and you need to just learn this. It's going to be more classroom driven. You learn about skills like decision making and conflict resolution and negotiations, things like you can't put a finger on them. If you know what happens in an MBA class, what the MBA experience is like, then you will know how to contextualize your experiences in the application. So please do that research, and there are many books also which are available for this. A book that I'm going to highly recommend, I don't know if it's still in print, I had read that many years back, is a book called Case Studies and Cocktails. Brilliant book, like amazing book. I recommend everyone to read that book. It's about what really happens once you are in business school, what is the kind of life that you expect, and it gives you a real world view, at least for some of us who are not able to travel and visit so many campuses to kind of figure out which schools to kind of apply to.
Preeti,
Look
one
at
of the
that.
things I'll mention is that even the social media channels, like the YouTube channels of a lot of schools, give you real insight into the classroom, because it's like being a fly on the wall and really attending a class if you're not able to travel there. I mean, one of the examples that comes to mind immediately is like the Harvard case study method. There's actually a video that's on YouTube on their channel, which talks about what it's like to be a part of that case study class.
Yeah.
When Preeti talks about the MBA experience, you need to understand that your MBA experience is not guided by the theory, but by the interactions that you have and the kind
Yeah.
of perspective that you gain. and which is why the programs are sought after, right? Because of the kind of effort that goes into selecting and putting together a really really diverse class with diverse opinions. I think more than saying diverse, I think it kind of misleads people because you're thinking that this is a global cohort. It's not about that. It's about just having such diverse experiences rooted in so many different life experiences. So look at social media channels. Try, and if you can't travel to a classroom and be a part of a classroom, at least look at being a fly on the wall in on one of their YouTube videos.
Yeah. Now, Krishna is asking, when is the ideal time to approach a consultant? Ideally, early is better. In fact, we
Yeah.
have also started helping applicants plan their MBA journey 2 years in advance. Because I think we've seen some great successes for people who've done that consistently. But if you're applying, let's say for round one, of course, we can still help with that gut check, that spot analysis kind of a thing. But for round two, you can approach us right now. Then we can kind of see if we are the right people to work with you, if we are folks that you would like to work with, and then we
Yeah.
can take it from there. Um, Sunny's asking, will you be able to link the school research webinar? I do have the link to our webinars, but I'm not
I can post it here.
yeah, I'm not able to post the let me see, I'm not able to post the link. GMAT club will have to give me access to the chat box to post the link. um, so I'm
So,
afraid, is anyone from GMAT club here? um, I'm sorry, Sunny. I'm not able to do that. But if you just type, the red pen MBA in YouTube,
yeah,
box, you'll find us.
it's a
You'll find
whole
us.
playlist, so you'll be able to access it. And
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
and it's an entire webinar series. There are six, sessions in that series, and we've covered resume, we've covered um,
research,
school research, essays, letters of
LOR.
recommendation,
Yeah.
everything. So I think look at the one on resumes as well, guys. We have covered a piece on LinkedIn as well about your social media presence and how that does get evaluated. So do look at that. There's a whole lot of good information, and we can only hope that that helps you. Well, I
Yeah.
think we were well over time, but I think this was
Yeah.
totally worth it. I really hope even if one person benefits from this session, I think we have perhaps achieved the goal that we set out to achieve. So wish everyone all the
All
very
the best
best
with your
for your
process.
round one
Yes.
presentations, and do stay in touch. And if there's any advice that you found valuable that you heard over here, then do let us know, and do let us also know writing to this email address as to what more would you like us to talk about, because we
Yeah.
sometimes run out of topics what to do, right, Natasha?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
all right. Great. Wish everyone a very good night. Have a lovely weekend, whichever part of the world you are. And thank you for having us here, GMAT Club. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.